I want to teach my grandchildren how to be resilient when difficulties come along, because we're not going to avoid them. They're coming for all of us, so that's the waka that I'm on at the moment.
This podcast is proudly supported by the Ōtara Network Action Committee, ōNAC, community-owned, community-driven and community-led.
Hi once again, and welcome back to the We Are Ōtara podcast, sponsored by ōNAC, Ōtara Network Action Committee, ōNAC, community-owned, community-driven, community-led. Now, I forgot to introduce myself. Oh my goodness. My name is Vincent Tyrone Vitellino. I want you to know my name because you'll be part of my family. And like everyone else in these episodes, we got an amazing, another one by the name of Tipi Arthur. He is a youth advocate who's basically his life goal and his well, I wouldn't even say his job, but definitely his life goal to lead our youth in our community into somewhere better. And what I mean by somewhere better is that they can be able to pick themselves up and just basically lead them into somewhere where they'll be safe and they can be proud of themselves. And he shows that through his stories about himself and his mokopuna, his family, and how he interacts with everyone in his circle. And he learns that he puts that into practice with his youth there. So again, beautiful episode, awesome episode. I hope you enjoy it. This is Tipi Arthur.
My full name is Tipi Arthur, and I'm actually from Porirua.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I moved here in 1989. My mother-in-law passed away in that same year, and we decided to come north to look after my father-in-law. And funnily enough, Ōtara was just supposed to be a kind of a stopover for us. We were heading across to Puputoitoi. But so we came here and loved it so much that we have forgotten to leave and actually don't want to leave. Yeah, this is home for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. All my growing up was really down in Porirua.
Oh, yeah.
I'm from a place called Takapawahia, which is once upon a time was a pa. And if you make reference to the word pa, then people will know where you're talking about. If you're from Porirua, they'll know exactly where the pa is. So that's where I was raised. And as I said, I think I was maybe 24, 25 when we moved here. So all our children have been raised here in Ōtara. We have 5 children. And so they've all been raised here. Although 4 boys, 1 girl. The boys were born down in Wellington and Porirua, and my daughter was born here in Auckland.
Was there any sort of differences with your daughter and your sons growing up? Like, there must have been like some, despite being in Wellington, was there any difference between the two communities of Auckland and Wellington? No,
not for me, Vinny, not for me. In fact, the reason why I chose to stay in Ōtara because it was very much like the community that I'd left, very close-knit.
Yeah.
And at one stage, everybody looking after one another. And that's what we found here in Ōtara, is everybody caring for each other. It's changed a little bit over time, but that basic principle of caring for each other is still here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the same, so that's why I think I stayed in Ōtara, because where I'd come from, where I'd left, was pretty much the same way. You could walk down the road in Porirua and where we were in our little community and go into an auntie's or an uncle's, because we're all related. Just go in there, walk in there and have a feed, have a sleep, have a shower if you wanted to, know. And everybody looked after everybody when we were kids, everybody looked after everybody down there, and it was kind of very similar here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From what you've seen in the past, has that culture changed for us now? Or is it still the same?
I think it has changed a little. The basic principle of caring and looking after one another is still here. It's still really here. But there are some elements that have definitely changed in the community, and I have thought about it and reflected on it as to why those changes have happened. And basically, I think I put it down to people just trying to survive, trying to put one foot in front of the other, and trying to look after their families as best they can. A lot of people are just finding that to be quite difficult, let alone, other things like mixing in the community. But I think people are just doing their best to try and survive the economic climate, especially in these days.
Yeah. And I noticed that happened, around 2020.
Yeah.
During lockdown, a lot of our families were struggling that time, both financially as well as trying to find a career during that time to support their family. Was it difficult during that time for yourself during lockdown?
I was extremely blessed and very fortunate that I was able to hold on to my role, my working role, my employment role. What was frustrating for me was working from home. Yeah, that was really frustrating, like a lot of other people. But it was really frustrating working from home, and by the end of it, by the time we came out to where we are now, I was ready to sell my house. I was definitely ready to go back to work. But I was just extremely sick and tired of staying at home, really.
What got yourself so motivated while working at home? There must have been something that pushed you further to go, I'm working at home, but I need to do the best that I could out of the situation. So what did you do?
Good question. Part of it is because of the role that I have in my employment, where I'm up against timeframes.
Yeah.
So those timeframes are legal timeframes, and they have to be met. So, whether you got up with a headache or sick or didn't feel like working today, because of those timeframes. And of course, like so many other people, I just wanted to do the best I could, because I knew there were people who were relying on me, not because, because I didn't want to let people down, basically. My employer, I have a fantastic boss, and I didn't really want to let him down. So that was kind of like a motivator for me, more of a motivator, besides the time frames that I had to meet. Yeah. I just didn't want to let people down, key people, who had really been there for me. I didn't want to let them down. That's what was really motivating me.
Yeah. The first time I met you at an ŌNAC meeting, I saw you the first time across the room, and I was like, man, this guy's a go-getter. He's got a big smile on, and he was like, my name is Tipi. Mentioning about himself, and I'm just sitting there going, wow, I wish I had that energy, wish I could wake up every morning going, I'm ready, flex out and whatnot. So, I saw you then, and could you describe what sort of work that you do, if you don't mind? Because I heard that you didn't want to let people down. So what sort of work do you do?
I'm working with young people. Actually, I'm what they call a youth justice coordinator. So basically, when young boys or girls under the age of 17 get referred, and there's two ways. They could either get referred from the courts or from the police. So for coordinators, we work closely with social workers who are also along part of our team. And there's a requirement for us to pull a whole lot of people together and see. I guess the whole aim of the work is to keep young people out of the system, out of getting in on that justice ladder, court ladder. So that's the whole thrust of it. And, sometimes it's unfortunate, but we have some wins, but we have some losses too, where eventually, and basically we just bring a whole range of people together, lawyers, police, victims, other people who could help the young person, pull them all together. And if we're allowed to create a plan, then we'll try and create a plan, build that plan with the young person in mind, and surround him and his or her family with just a whole bunch of support to help them regain the young person and put them back in as a contributing citizen in society, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're helping out the youth, and it's a very intricate part of their lives, especially around this time. The 3 years for any young person around the ages of 18 to even up to 30 is very intricate, because they don't know where they are at the moment. COVID's just basically put basically a roadblock for them.
Yeah.
How do you get into, let's just say I'm a teenager and I come up to you and ask for help. What is the ways that you go through to sort of just figure out ways to help them out?
Yeah, so one of those people that I mentioned we try to bring together would be specialists who might be, obviously you'd have to know what was what kind of help the young person were asking for. Now, that's a little bit out of my scope, because I'm not really trained to identify what might be the challenge for Vinny, but there are people around who can do that. And so if you were that person, that young person, Vinny, I would first of all say, hey, look, Vinny, I've got some people that, and they would be specialists in that field. So can I hook you up with one of those, Vinny, and have a talk? And then hopefully through that conversation, they would identify, okay, Vinny needs this kind of help, or we could pin it down to what is actually, and it's all confidential, it's all just between the specialist and yourself, and it's, because as you said, there's just so many challenges out there for our young people, and they just, if I put it this way, Vinny, I've come from the police, so I did 24 years in the police. 12 of those years were working with young people. So my mindset today is different to what it was when I was in the police. In the police, it was more or less the attitude of lock them up, throw away the key, But that's, it's taken a long time, but I've finally reached the point where that's not going to serve the community at all. And what we need to be doing is looking at ways to change attitudes, change minds, and change hearts with our young people. But families in particular, male role models are really crucial in helping that young person, be they boy or girl, to change their attitudes. Unfortunately, in my role, and my colleagues who are in the same role, it's really, we don't often get male role models. Fathers are generally absent. Mothers are always there, but male role models are kind of absent. So it's really difficult, challenging sometimes.
Yeah. I can't imagine that, if you're a young person and you don't have those role models with you.
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm very blessed with my own role models.
Yeah.
I have my mother and my father.
Yeah.
And then along the way I had my teachers, and then people outside like Judy Spates, Will Fleming. If you were a teenager, let's put Tipi back into his tiny shoes.
Yeah.
What would be your ideal, what would be your ideal role model? If you were growing up, what would be your image of a role model?
Okay, well, that would be easy, because I was brought up in an era where they strapped and caned.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were strapped and caned, and I think I still hold the record for the cane at my college that I attended. But so for me, I think what kids really gravitate to is a loving, sincere, caring conversation in nature. You might not be able to fix their challenge, but just through the way that you interact with them, and that first of all, it's seen as being sincere, because young people are really smart.
Yeah,
they can pick up on whether you're sincere or you're just faking it. They can really pick up on it, and I have to say, to my shame, that there's been a few times that I've been caught out on it. Because you underestimate young people, but they're really smart. So to answer your question, Vinny, I would be looking for somebody, and it's only because I've come from that era where they strapped and caned. So, and we're and sometimes they were very happy about doing it, so I'd be looking for somebody who had a soft, caring, sincere voice, because I've seen the both sides of that kind of a person and the other kind of person who just wants to beat you. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen both sides. Yeah. And I think our kids, once they see that you're sincere in wanting to help them, and that doesn't mean to say you're going to help them, but that you have a sincere wairua about you wanting to help them, then they will, more than likely gravitate.
Have that connection.
You have that connection. And then, that connection will allow you to connect to other people who can help them. It's that trust thing. You can get that trust thing. Where in my day, it was, you're doing it this way, and no other way is going to be good enough, Yeah, so that was us. Yeah. In our day. Hey, Judy.
Judy's in the background doing our recordings. Just that my brothers, I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and my mother and father were from the islands. So when they came over, my older sister, her name's Margaret, had to take a lot of the flack because she had to look after the other siblings. So my father was very, he was a very honest person, but when times he had to become very violent, and when I say violent, it was discipline. Yeah. So it was the good smack around and whatnot. And then after the 5th child, which is me, I the other kids went, why is he not getting? Why is he not getting the caning? Why is he not getting the hits? They realized that my dad's at age has slowly realized this is not the way to do it.
Actually, Vinny, that's a really good point you raised, because I was the same as your dad. That's how I raised my 5 children. Yeah. If they needed, I won't say those ugly words, but if they needed it, they got it. And contrary to where we are in terms of the law today about smacking children, but if my children needed it, they got it. For sure they got it, But along with that, and people who saw me in that space misinterpreted, but it was because, I'm sure it was the same for your dad, he just had an immense amount of love for you and didn't want all your brothers and sisters. Sounds like you didn't get much of it, but
that's fine.
But
no.
I really think there's a difference between beating and discipline, and I always considered myself, I've been beaten. I know the difference between the two. I've been beaten. I have some horrific stories. And so I know I know the difference between being beaten and disciplining, with love, disciplining with love. But that doesn't quite fit in with our society today, and it doesn't look like it's going to in the future either. But, like all my kids, none of them have been in trouble with the law. They're all adults now. They've all got their own lives, same as your family, Vinny. But and I put it down to strict discipline, and I don't mean just talking. What I really mean is when they needed it, they got it. But they got it wrapped in a cloak of love. And I know a lot of people have a challenge with that because they don't think you can do the both. But I know from personal experience it works. Yeah. Only it just doesn't fit with
the current situation.
With the law today.
Yeah. So with that said, what is it that if someone like an adult wanted to become someone's role model, what would that look like for them? How would they be able to do that, to work on that?
Yeah. Well, the first things for me is I would never advocate that, because that worked for me. It worked for me because I had it fine-tuned. Yeah. And you would have to have confidence that person could have it the same way. And of course, we're all different. So there's no guaranteed, because the next step after discipline is outright beating. And so I would feel really uncomfortable in advocating that. I mean, that's what I did with my children. It worked for me. And I know the reason why it worked for me, because I just shrouded it in love. But I'm not, and that's why, because you take a risk. When you start to advocate that, it's a huge risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a huge risk, because more than likely those people, because they haven't had that experience, will go into a space that will put them offside with the law. So I would never advocate it, you know.
What would be a very, very nice way of doing it? Well, not really, just a very appropriate way. Well, because a lot of our kids, like you said, you're sharper than that.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a way where not only discipline is achieved, which is like maybe like stern talking to, like a very strong voice, like you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Vinny, I have 22 mokos. Let my wife and I have 22 mokos. And just when you think you knew it all because you've come through that through that time of raising your 5 children, you know, like I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And I have one of my daughter-in-laws who's local. She lives local in Papatoetoe with our son. I watched her one day when her children, they've got 6 children, you know, and I watched her one day when 2 of her children were just out there. They were just going berserk, you know. And I watched her go over, kneel down, and then talk to the children, you know, just talk to them. And, you know, one minute they were off the scales, the next minute they were calm and collected, and they were thinking about a different way of doing it. And I looked at that example and I thought, wow, maybe I'll try the same with my grandchildren, you know. Not that I ever want to touch them, because they're not mine to touch, you know, but maybe I'll try a different approach and just talking with them, but talking in a way that, you know, in a way that they fully understand what they're doing is not right, you know, and why are they doing it, you know, because, and so, you know, I'm up for learning, Vinny. So while it worked for me, it may not work for me in the future, but I've learnt another way through my daughter-in-law, you know, which is kind of different for me, because the way I've been brought up and the way I brought up my children, that's way different, you know. But I'm up to give it a shot, especially now with my grandchildren, you know. I just want to do the best I can for my grandchildren. Yeah. And if that means, okay, bend your knee, get down to their level and talk with them, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing it.
It's allowing yourself to have options, right?
Yeah.
And I'm currently, I can't believe this because I haven't got a child myself. I'm an uncle of like nearly 16 now. Even my nephews have children. I'm sitting there going, what the heck? And I'm trying my best uncle hat on, and I'm learning with all the kids, and I'm sitting there, I'm talking to them. I was like, okay, you did this. So what do you know, how would you think mum would feel? And they would be like, oh, mum would be angry or sad. And then, is that the right way? You know, do you want to be treated like that? And they'll actually think, and they'll go, oh, no, not really. And then come back to it, and then they'll apologize to mum. Mum will apologize to them, you know. And over the like 10 years that I've been with my ones, and some of them have grown up and gone to Australia. They haven't taken their uncle yet, so I'm waiting for a ticket.
Could be waiting a long time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The parents will come back to me and they're like, "Why are they cool with you and not cool with me?" And I'm like, "Wow, maybe you just treat them a little bit better." Yeah. And they're like, "Fair enough." I just keep yelling at them, and hopefully they'll stop. So yeah, I definitely agree. Options is a way. Just have heaps of it, because then you'll be able to hit one at least with them.
I think the thrust for us now, Vinny, is really trying to accelerate developing relationships with them. Yeah. Because there are so many things out there that could, you know, like I'm interested in resilience, and how do you get resilience, and how do you teach resilience? Because, you know, like I saw at this point in our lives, we've all had to suffer disappointment of some sort, you know, and, you know, so I want to be able to teach my grandchildren how to be resilient when disappointment comes along, rather than, you know, like, sadly, I have a friend who lost his daughter. She took her own life just last week, 19 years old, and took her own life. Beautiful young woman, had her whole life in front of her, but because she had a challenge, and she possibly might not have known how to. She wasn't, resilience. I think if she had been taught, or if she fully understood to be resilient, that may have helped her, and she could have been still with us. Yeah. And so that scares me, and so that's why I want to teach my grandchildren how to be resilient when difficulties come along, because we're not going to avoid them. They're coming for all of us, So that's the waka that I'm on at the moment, and that's why I really want to be here for my grandchildren, but not just here living, standing above the ground, present in their lives when they need to. Because I already know some of my grandchildren might have challenges talking to their parents, but hey, you can come and talk to us, But you have to develop that relationship with them first. No relationship, nobody's going to come and talk with you, So that's the waka we're on. We're trying to develop the relationship so we can be there for them when they strike that hurdle and need somebody to talk to, but just can't talk to mum and dad at the moment. Well, try us. We're non-judgmental. Not to say your parents are judgmental, but try us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, give us a shot. Yeah, and I want to be there in that capacity for them.
Absolutely, being that option for them, and it's not just closed off.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way of saying it. It's just being open, going, hey, look, we're here. Yeah. With that said, what is it that you would like to see in the future with your team, as well as anyone that you worked with, like even just youth or your workers, your colleagues? What do you want to see them go through in the future? Is there a vision that you want to see?
Well, the scriptures say without vision you perish. So, I do. I guess the vision for me, collectively as a community, is that I do have a vision for that, and that's that we can be collective enough for our community, that because having worked in the community like so many others, Vinny, there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of things in the community where you could be seen to be doing it for your own gain, and once you go down that track and you lose vision of the community, then things start to fragment and break apart. But if we may not agree, which is quite often when you work in that kind of environment, we don't often agree, but we can't let our own personalities get in the way of that. So that's my vision in the community. One of the things that I'm passionate about in this community here, Vinny, is that approach, and we might not get along with each other, but when we look at the big picture, and the big picture is all of us, it's not any one of us, or any select organisation or group, it's all of us together. So that's what I'm passionate about, is us all going together. And if we're all going to row the waka, we all got to get in the waka first, and then we all row together. In terms of my family, I think I spelled out the vision for my family is I want to be present. My wife and I live for our grandchildren, Our children have kind of taken a back step now, but we live for our grandchildren so that they can have a fair shake of life like we have had. And so that means a whole lot of things. Too long for this podcast, but that means a whole lot of things, and I'm saying that, Vinny, because unfortunately I have a brother who's passed away at 55, and now he has about the same amount of grandchildren as I do, but none of them know him. Not one of them know him, and they all rely on me to tell them about my brother, their grandfather. And I don't want to be in. So it's a kind of a holistic approach.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual. It's a physical. I want to look after myself physically so that I'm here longer as long as I can be, So that's why, my wife and I pound the streets every morning. We're trying to be here in the lives of our grandchildren for as long as we can. And that's the drive, and that's the motivation, and that's the passion for us, Winnie. Yeah. I hope that answers it.
Oh, no, that answered more than some. That's an awesome and very beautiful vision.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't really go past what's in front of us. They're normally just stuck with this brick wall that we can't see in front.
Yeah.
But to see that, I can literally picture each and every word that you just mentioned. Your family, your work, your community, everyone around you. It's a beautiful vision. And I hope to keep that image with me, because then I can be able to take bits of it myself and build the character that I need to be,
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Vinny.
All right.
Thank you.
And finally, I like to leave off with my viewers and my listeners with something that they can take, which is, what is a quote or a inspiration sentence or quote that's been said to you that you want to pass on to everyone who's watching?
Good question, Vinny. So I learned just recently a quote, and it was from Sir James Henry, who was a paramount chief. He was a huge influence in the life of many, many people, specifically Māori. And he said, we have come too far not to go further, and we have done too much not to do more, And so I carry that with me. I think of it every day and try and apply it in my life and in my work. I'm down the track, in terms of age, I'm down the track. So, but I can go a little bit further, when I reflect on. So that's a quote that maybe I could just share with us all. We've come too far not to go further, and we've done too much not to do more. Yeah. Yeah. And that's Sir James Henry. That's him.
That is a beautiful quote to end off with. And thank you so much again, Tipi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Once again, thank you, and I hope to see you in the next episode.